what's interesting about this is Wesley wasn't actually a big fan and didn't want to do this, right? Like, he wasn't looking to do this. He has this great quote in one of his journals about field preaching. And he says, "What a marvel the devil does not love field preaching, neither do I. I love a commodious room, a soft cushion, a handsome pulpit. But where is my zeal if I do not trample all of these underfoot in order to save one more soul?" Right? He didn't want to do it. But he did it anyway. Right? And we also understand like what the field was. It wasn't like a field around here, right? A big empty field. He wasn't standing amongst the corn stalks all by himself proclaiming to the heavens, right? No. In the days before, there was YouTube and, and coffee shops and Starbucks and all that sort of stuff, right? People still liked to gather. In fact, they gathered together far more than we do now because you couldn't just go home and watch TV, right? And so people would gather in places. They would gather in public spaces, and they would gather in fields because if you all lived in your own different farms, right, then you would find there was usually a designated spot amongst the field where you would gather. If you were a miner or, and involved with that, there was a place you all sat around in a field and ate lunch, and then there were town squares. And town squares where merchants and shopping and all this stuff was going on. And one of the things that would come through is that you would expect when you go to these places that people would come, and give speeches and talk and all that kind of stuff. It was like, it's like 300-year-old really annoying Facebook ads, right? Like where you're just hanging out with your friends and somebody stands up on a box and starts talking about politics, right? And like, oh, I don't want to hear that. Well, in Wesley's day, that happened in the field. It happened in the town squares. So Wesley looked around and said, the people that I want to reach, the people that I want to talk to, which are the people who are not engaged in faith, who are not engaged in the church, who don't really understand the good news, those folks, Wesley figured out, aren't in the church. And he also figured out the people in the church really weren't interested in the good news, but that's a different problem. And so he took the good news to where the people are. That's what field preaching was Wesley going to where the people were. If Wesley were alive today, Wesley would be on Twitch or YouTube. See, you don't even know what Twitch is, do you? Or YouTube. Wesley would have a rockin' Facebook page, right? He would be where the people are, and he would take the good news to those who hadn't heard it, right? So that's what actually it's a very long introduction to what we're going to do today. We're going to talk about where the people are and how do we bring our message into that space. And even if we don't necessarily feel like we're welcome, even if we don't feel invited, and even if we don't want to, right? Because Wesley doesn't allow us to not do something just because we don't want to do it, right? That's not who we are as Methodists. Methodists do things that we don't want to do. We eat our vegetables, darn it. And we do it not for our sakes, but for the sake of others. All right. So where are